Good evening. The program tonight comes to you from the South German city of Augsburg, on the other side of the world. And I'm glad to say that we've got here three direct descendants, survivors of the battle, and the son of one of the serving officers who fought in the German cruiser Emden. And now I'm glad to be able to introduce to you these German sailors to you. And on the left I have here Petty Officer Hans Hahns. He's 72. And next to him here on my right I have able Seaman Arthur Werner. He also is 72. And on my left here I have the retired captain of the German Navy, Erich Prekenschau. He is 73 years old, and next to him on the extreme left we have the Prince Meinrad of Hohenzollern. He's the son of Prince Franz Joseph of Hohenzollern, who served in the Emden, but who, I'm sorry to say, died only a few weeks ago. Of course, you appreciate that three of these distinguished sailors are old men, and it's not easy for them, after so many years, to speak, particularly in front of television cameras in a foreign language. Captain Prekenschau, you were a lieutenant at the time of the battle.
Yes, I have been lieutenant on board the Emden.
I see, and at the time of this operation, perhaps you could tell us what was the principal purpose of the entry by your ship into the Indian Ocean and your presence near the Cocos Islands?
After capture of ships, we have the order to destroy the wireless station and cables of the Cocos Island. They were the communication between Colombo and Australia.
Now, Hans Hahns, you're an engine room petty officer on the starboard engine, I believe, and you were been at sea since you were 18.
Yes, right.
And your father and great-grandfather before you, I think.
Yes, right, you are.
And tell me, when this landing party went on shore, what were you doing and what did you see?
Oh, I well remember that there was on that wonderful morning I was standing on deck of the Emden with some of my comrades, and we were watching the mast of the cable station dropping to the ground. You know, there were some people on our...
When it was being blown up.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Well, then suddenly we heard a voice from the crow's nest, you know, crow's nest, and there is a big smoke cloud at the horizon. Look out. And a few seconds later, well, that must be a man of war, because the masts are slanting.
I see, and the masting, and the slant on the mast.
Yes, you know, a merchant ship has straight mast,
Yes.
but the warship has slanting mast, standing like this here.
Yes.
And a few seconds later, there was a call, clear for action.
Our able Seaman Werner, I think you were the man who conveyed the gunnery orders down the speaking tube to the guns. That was your job.
Yes, sir.
And you, in fact, are the principal eyewitness of what went on.
From beginning to the end.
I see. And you were on deck. You saw practically everything.
Yes, sir.
Now then, I wonder if you can tell us, before the battle began, what did you see?
It was very easy to tell. Very easy. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning. You saw the smoke. Now, Captain was in the meaning was our coal ship because he had debunked him at 9 o'clock. But this smoke was bigger and bigger, and our captain became suspicious. He climbed up with the adjutant in the mast.
He climbed the mast himself.
Yes, he climbed up himself. Yes, he was a good climber. And climbed up. And at once it was made a signal to the landing party to make haste with their walk. 5 or 10 seconds later, the signalman from the cruiser bellowed down, enemy warship with 4 fellows in sight.
Now, Prince Meinrad, your father, I believe, was second in command of torpedoes.
Well, that's true. And for to go right into detail, I want to show you on the picture of the Emden where my father was at the moment of the battle, was down here in the torpedo room. Since we show the whole picture already, you see the artillery of the Emden firing. You see the artillery of the Emden, of course, was 4.1-inch guns, and the Sydney had 5.9-inch guns. So it was quite clear that the reach of the artillery of HMS Sydney was much farther, and this, of course, gave a very quick decision afterwards.
Yes, a decisive superiority.
Yes, right.
And your father, did he have any particularly vivid memory of what it was like below deck in this action?
As far as my father told me, of course, he only heard the things which were going on deck, the artillery and all the rest. But the most vivid impression which my father had was the breaking in of water in the torpedo room. So he and his crew had to save themselves because not only the water was breaking in, but also the gas, you know, from artillery, from smoke, the shells. So they had to make out their way not through the average manhole, but they had to dump out practically through the hole in which the artillery had made.
Yes, yes,
That's
see.
it.
Yes, and of course destruction was very rapid.
The destruction on the Emden was rather immediate.
Yes. I believe the ship was camouflaged with 4 funnels at this time, was it not?
No, there was a fourth funnel which could be put behind the third one to give the impression that it was a British ship.
Oh yes, but it wasn't in use at this particular
not
time.
at this particular time.
And I believe that the steering was hit. The funnels were
the 3 funnels were blown practically over deck by the shells, and this of course reduced speed very quickly. You know, the Emden made 19 knots and the Sydney 26 knots. So this made possible that the Sydney could always keep out from the artillery fire of the Emden.
Yes, and I believe there's a further technical problem, is there not, that when the steering was hit, the steering had to be done by alternating the speeds of the engines.
This is right.
And this in turn, of course, further reduced speed and reduced any hope, however thin it was, of using torpedoes at any time.
Well, you see, the torpedoes couldn't be of any use since we couldn't get close enough to the Emden. You see.
No, I see.
To the Sydney.
Yes, I see that. Yes.
And the Sydney always could escape.
With such immense destruction and with so many casualties on this wrecked ship, Captain Karl von Müller, Commander Karl von Müller, I should call him really, had only one course of action to take.
Which is true. As a matter of fact, after the artillery had fallen out, so the ship was practically wrecked, and there was only one thing to do, run the ship at full speed on the coral reef. And that Captain von Müller finally did.
Yes.
So to save the lives of those who were still left in the hulk of the ship.
Especially those below deck.
That's right.
And what time of the day did this happen? About...
This must have been, as my father told me, at 11:15 in the morning.
In the morning?
Yes.
Yes, I see. And from then onwards, there was a further exchange of firing. There was some more firing from the Sydney, wasn't there? In the afternoon.
This is true. As you see, the flag of the Emden was still on the mast.
I wanted to ask you about this flag. In fact, it was still flying, and perhaps it was a misunderstanding.
That's true, because the flag couldn't get down from the mast, since everything was destroyed. The decks were burning, so how could you reach it? And there was one man who brought it finally down, and this man is sitting next to you.
Yes, indeed, he's sitting next to me tonight. Now, able Seaman Werner, you were the man who got the flag down, weren't you?
Yes,
and as long as the flag was flying, there was the danger that further shelling from the Sydney would kill more of your comrades.
Yes, sir.
And when you got it down, there was no chance of pulling it down mechanically. Everything had been destroyed in the fire.
Yes,
That's
sir.
right. Now, what did you do?
I climbed up the
You
mast.
climbed right up the mast.
Yes.
You got hold of the flag.
Yes, hold down the flag.
You hauled it down.
Yes.
And then you came right down the mast.
And went to the captain.
You went to the captain, and after that, the flag was burned, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Now, Petty Officer Hans, tell us how you finally got on board the Sydney.
You see, I jumped overboard in the morning, and by the time it got evening, and nobody of the Sydney knew that I was ashore, a thirsty man. And then I rowed out to the Sydney. I saw only some lights there. I still remember the moon was shining, and finally I reached the Sydney. And when I stepped on the ladder, somebody came down with a big lamp and was searching me for arms, and I couldn't help laughing and said, well, you see, I have nothing on, I'm quite naked. Shall I have my arms? And then somebody, come on, boy. Then I stepped aboard, and then there was a very stout Australian sailor and said, come on, boy, you have a mug of tea here. Well, I assure you, that was the best cup of tea I ever had in my life. And I sincerely hope that Australian soldier who handed me that big mug is still enjoying his own cup of tea, as I did at that time.
Good. And just to close, I think I ought to tell you that when they got on board the Sydney, after this heroic action, the German officers were given the privilege of carrying sidearms. This privilege was given by the Australian commander, as you know, not only for the gallantry with which they fought this action, but also because of the chivalrous conduct with which they had carried out the previous raids, sending their prisoners back to port in captured ships. And what you don't know, and may interest you, is that by order of the Kaiser himself, each and every surviving man is allowed to this day to have the name Emden added to his own. I thought perhaps you would like to know this as we conclude, because in the short time at our disposal, it's not been possible with these rather old and genial sailors to bring you much more of this drama in the last action fought by the German cruiser Emden.